Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Township of Georgian Bay Planning Council for Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:03. In the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, the sky, and all that live in, on, and above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we want to thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our actions and our decisions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take real actions towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest or anything else you would think we should know before we proceed with this morning's meeting? I'm seeing heads shaking no. So we'll move on, and I have moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that Council adopts the planning agenda of May 9th, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And our first item is with regards to a minor variance agreement under staff reports. A 22-07 for 210 Pratts Road. Your planning department.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. In March 10th of this, am I echoing? Am I okay? Okay. March 10th of this year, the halls in front of Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance. Honestly, can't remember exactly what the details were, other than I had a fairly detailed set of studies associated with it also. As you well aware, site plan's been gone for a while. There's talk about it coming back in some instances across Ontario, but in this particular case, we felt that moving forward still on some properties, we haven't done it on all properties. That it would make sense to still move forward with some registration of documents and on title. So Committee of Adjustment agreed that a minor variance agreement, which is permitted still under the Planning Act, be registered on title in this particular case. Minor variance agreements are different than site plan agreements in that they cannot be delegated. So we require your approval for the mayor and the clerk to enter into an agreement that we put together as a template together with the legal counsel for the halls in this regard. So we recommend in this particular case that the minor variance agreement as recommended by planning department together with the halls for 210 Pratts Road be that the mayor and the clerk be allowed to sign on behalf of the corporation.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Jarvis has a question.
Just to clarify, this and the next one seem to be new to planning council. I mean, we had them, I think, the last planning council meeting as well. Is this new as a result of legislation from the province? Because we weren't doing these before.
All right. So the township and most townships use site plan control, as you know, for years. And that disappeared last year.
That's what it is. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
However, the Planning Act has always had the ability to use minor variance agreements and consent agreements. They're just not as widely used, or were not as widely used. So we looked at that opportunity within the Act and said, yeah, we could probably take advantage or use the provisions of the Act in this particular case. So that's why we're back here. But unlike site plan control, the Planning Act does not allow for the approval of or the signing of it to be delegated to an officer of the corporation. So we're back here versus site plan control, which remains at the delegated officer level.
Got it. Okay. Very interesting.
Minor variance agreements are a little more, cumbersome than site plan also. So it's not something we like to do very often because it revolves around a whole bunch of extra machinations and complications. The site plan is a little simpler to use. So we
Okay.
don't like to use it, but we will if we have to.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. And I think you just answered the question there, but I just wanted to seek further clarity. Looking to delegate as much as we possibly can back to staff to be able to handle this, to make things a little bit more expedient. But as you just articulated, that this is not something that can be delegated back to staff, is that correct?
The Planning Act is very explicit on site plan. It's not as explicit on some of these other things. So I'm not saying it can't be. We just haven't investigated to see exactly how it would work if it is. I guess you could say to come. The other thing is that the province is talking about bringing site plan control back, as you may have heard. If it comes back, then we prefer to use that instrument rather than this. In terms of where we think it's most applicable, which would then bring back that delegated authority. So speaking in the bigger picture, there are a number of things in terms of delegation that we will be bringing forward through the clerk and through the CAO for consideration in terms of where council feels comfortable in allowing further delegation of authority, which would improve timelines, for example, in many cases. So.
Great. And it's just a very quick follow-up if I can suggest, perhaps maybe this is included in there if staff want to look at ways to perhaps allow us to delegate, because I can't see why we would want to go over COA.
We'll certainly take a look at all the possibilities, and as council's already pointed out in other venues that we will provide information as to what we're up to. You know that you certainly deserve all of that in terms of if we are given delegated authority about what we've been doing, as opposed to having to bring it for every single approval. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. I do have a question for David Smith here. I'm reading in your notes here the financial considerations, and in it's talking about a potential appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And if I think I understood you correctly, this is what you're asking for here in a minor variance agreement is essentially to replace what can't be used anymore, which is a site plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so in the world of a site plan, I don't think that was appealable to the OLT.
I guess you could say we add in many cases the clause just to cover our behinds, number one. And number two, considering it's the applicant in the township, they do retain certain rights, as far as I understand, in terms of, for example, if you wrote we wrote a minor variance agreement that required them to hang baskets and do all kinds of weird and wonderful things and said you can't get your development without it. I'm sure I would think that in some respects they would have some recourse to either the committee of adjustment or whatever it is to say, the township is being unreasonable into an agreement. Those things still need to be open to property owners when they say, Mr. Smith, you're being an idiot here in your agreement. We need to have some kind of recourse. So we've included clauses like this and to see whether or not there is recourse to OLT. I'm not 100% sure, but we do cover our behinds to say, listen, there may be. Okay, I don't expect anything here, but it is a standard clause in our reports for all. Yeah,
and that's fine. I'm okay with a standard clause. I'm just trying to understand the implications, and I'm thinking this actually might be potentially a good thing. In the world of a site plan, neighbors and other public were essentially prevented because a site plan is a relationship between the township and the applicant or the property owner, 1-to-1, and a minor variance, if it opens up a path for the public to offer comment and potentially appeal, then that's a significant difference. And I'm just trying to get clarity. It doesn't have anything to do with this one specifically, but in general, as we move from what might have been handled with a site plan into a minor variance, which, as I understand it, are items and agreements that can make their way to the OLT. Is that true?
so there's a lot mixed up in that comment you just made there. So the neighbors no longer have appeal rights. period. Okay, they provide it, a committee of adjustment, neighbors, other interested parties as opposed to agencies. They provide their comments to the committee of adjustment and they make their piece there. There is no appeal by neighbors to a decision or to an agreement such as what we have before you.
After the fact.
After the fact, they
Okay.
make their committee
Okay.
of adjustment are expected to take their considerations into thought.
Yep.
And make a decision based on the evidence in front of them. So once committee of adjustment is made their decision, it's the end of appeal for the neighbors. They may have agreed with the neighbors, they may not have. So this is
Okay, so this
only
does-
between the owner and the township.
Okay, so this doesn't open up any new
No.
paths that
No.
previously didn't exist with the.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to get clarity on that.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you for all that information, David, and just, you made a comment about site plan may be coming back. That would, in other words, the Ontario government is considering maybe reversing engines, or I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I wanted to get to that. And then my second question, part of that question is that site plan, as I understand it, talks about where things are situated, and there are limitations to site plan, as I understand it, including environmental issues. Is that correct or not? Or it certainly used to be, and we have a legal opinion to that effect. Thank you.
Site plan is certainly a larger discussion overall, and I would certainly be happy to talk to you about this offline or with other counselors, but it's certainly a larger question. To answer the simplest one is, yeah, the province is looking to bring it back, but it also recognizes that site plan was used and abused in a number of different situations, not all of them the same, but it's probably begs a different forum than this particular application at the moment for that, if you don't mind.
Second question regarding the environmental ability of using site plan to enforce environmental issues.
Yeah, you've met Councillor and you provided information to the department previously, and we certainly continue to keep that in mind when we talk about applications.
And I think that if the province brings back some form of site plan control in some situations, and then it would behoove us at that time to consider how we can utilize whatever they bring back.
In other words, enhance our tools, if I can get this to stay on. So that we have some control over environmental issues. Because that's really the pretty biggie. That's the biggie. Thank you.
Any other comments or observations? I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign a minor variance agreement as recommended by the planning department with Christopher and Erica Hall for 210 Pratts Road. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And we have one more file for a minor variance agreement. Mr. Smith, over to you, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, for Marsh and Clapp for 161 West Shore Road. The discussion on this one is similar we just had with the Halls. This variance was before committee of adjustment on February 17th of this year. Taken a while, obviously, to get to places, which in some respects speaks to the delegation, which was mentioned by one of the councillors previously, but overall, the concepts and direction are the same. The agreements are virtually, well, the agreement parts of are the same. It's the attachments that begin to vary, of course, and in these particular situations. But the conversation we had regarding the previous one is also valid here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions or concerns? I've moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign a minor variance agreement as recommended by the planning department with Marchant and Clapp for 161 West Shore Road. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And item C is in regards to 116 Musky Bay Road and the rezoning fees and costs. Again, over to our planning department, Mr. Smith.
All right. This goes back a while in terms of history, which is in the report highlights, June 1990. The owners applied to rezone 116 Musky from an M1 zone to at the time an RE special zone to allow a new dwelling. That was in June. In October of 1990, the council at the time adopted that rezoning. They passed the zoning amendment. September 91, roughly a year later, council at the time adopted a brand new comprehensive zoning bylaw 91. I can't remember the second part, 9119 or something like that. At the time, and unfortunately it changed the zoning back to what the Cunningham and Rusin had at the time. So went backwards. They didn't find out about it till last month. So from 1991, September 1991, they didn't know about it. They hadn't necessarily paid any attention to it. And I guess they're in the process of doing again things with their property or estate planning or whatever it is that they're up to, kind of thing. And notice that their zoning was back to pre or to whatever wherever it's been changed to in 2014. Geez, I'm getting lost in the years within that. They've requested that the township that they want to go back to the zone or something close to that zone in relationship to the 2014 zoning bylaw. And they've requested the township pay for all the costs that are associated with that. They figured it was the township's fault that they were rezoned. They didn't ask for it. They had paid initially in 1990 for rezoning at the time and are asking for the fees to be waived in this particular case. The fees that will be waived, and we cover them all, of course, is the application fee, proper public notice signage on the property, any survey costs if required. We don't see any. It is but we do cover off our behinds, so we don't have to come back in case we have made a mistake. Legal counsel, the OLT if required. We can never guarantee that a bylaw passed by council, even to rectify or to recognize things, will not be appealed. And any miscellaneous costs as they arise integral to the approval of the rezoning. Typically, what we're in here for is the staff time and the notice on the property overall. But when we go to some of these, if we're looking at some kind of M1 zone, that's a little different kind of thing. And we are not 100% sure where we end up with the neighbors these days too. So which could pose interesting questions to council if it comes forward that way. So we recommend that, for Lionel Cunningham and Hadrina Rusin, that the cost for 116 is outlined in the recommendation be approved.
All right, thank you very much. Councilor Jarvis.
Yeah, David, I see in the background notes that it was Mrs. Rusin who provided copies of documents supporting her expectation, yada, yada, yada. Did we have anything on our files that confirmed that the information that she had in hand was correct?
Well, the documentation we accepted is at face value, I guess you could say, right? And I can't say that we've been able to find files that date back ourselves. Things moved electronically in some respects, and some things did not survive at all. But applicants are able to provide and their own information at a time, and we take that at face value.
Well, it's great that she was able to provide the documentation. I feel sorry for somebody who has a similar situation and doesn't have the documentation. I'm hoping that we don't run into too many of these, but that's interesting.
They pop up, as you know, occasionally. This one goes way back, so it gets a lot tougher when you go back to this, to that age of documentation. So, and even these days, whether or not it's even possible to go forward on it, considering there's been changes in official plans and so on and so forth. So, yeah, in this particular case, we've taken a look at it, and it should be feasible within that.
Any other comments or questions? If I may, two questions, I guess. One is, you don't foresee any, we'll call it significant challenges in giving them a form of zoning that would satisfy their wish to build a residence on this property?
So I had one of our planners take a look at it overall. I think we're okay from it. planners hate to give you, we would never give you 100% guarantee, right? You're never gonna get that until we get to a public meeting and we say this is good or this is bad or for changes within that. If it's going to a housing and all the rest of it, fine. When we start dealing with the words industrial kind of thing in areas, if that's what we're pursuing, those pose greater problems depending on scale and size, right? Overall, I think they would didn't identify at the front end any significant issues with going back or readjusting it to today's standards. So
And which leads me to my second question is, are you expecting sometime in the future a public meeting for a rezoning, or is this going to be dealt with more as a housekeeping type of matter?
no, it'll be done, fairly immediately within the next 2-3 months. It'll come to planning council as a single property amendment.
And my final question is, I noticed that Ms. Rusin was asking for all costs, and you've specified costs, but with miscellaneous costs. So presumably we are now approving all costs that you can imagine occurring from this change.
We've had to come back and ask for additional monies on applications in the past, we forgot about a sign, which is worth $300. We forgot about so on and so forth. So again, we're just trying to make sure that we cover off everything that may be possible on the thing. Although again, in this particular case, we're probably into it for the signage and some mailing costs.
Yeah.
Is probably where we're at.
Yeah, because to the best of our knowledge, this was an error in preparing the 1991 official plan and zoning bylaw that the transition
Mhm.
overlooked some of the activity that happened immediately prior to that the official plan and zoning bylaw being approved.
I would guess it was an error. I
Yeah.
wouldn't think it would have been done maliciously,
Oh, no.
going back from considering a council passed it in 1 month and, short term later went to something else unless it was something else going on, but I would not think it was done.
All right, well, I appreciate the additional information. So I have moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Bocheck. Be it resolved that council authorizes the waiving, paying, or reimbursement to Mr. Lionel Cunningham and Ms. Hendrika Rosen of the following costs incurred in the rezoning of 116 Musky Bay Road. Zoning application, public notice signage on the property is required by the Planning Act. Survey costs by an Ontario land surveyor if required. Legal counsel at the Ontario Land Tribunal if required, and miscellaneous costs as they arise integral to the approval of the rezoning. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. And that ends the staff reports section of our agenda, and now we're on to new business. And Councillor Hazelton, I believe you want to present a motion with regards to the Bressette 951 Honey Harbor Road, Bass Bay Road situation. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. My objective here was to document as much of the matter and allow everyone to read it. I think what's important to me, to what I think is important to council and to staff, is that we have socialized the resolution with the Bressettes. I've received approval from our clerk, who also discussed this with our director of planning. And it appears that we have consensus across the board, but council needs to make the decision to make this something that staff can follow. So I'll pause there and ask if there's any questions that need to be addressed.
Thank you. Councillor Bocheck.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, not so much a question, but a comment. And I commend Councillor Hazelton for what he's done and what he's attempting to do here. I sat with this family many times in their kitchen trying to figure out which way we're going with this. And the stumbling blocks we've had moving this forward is I met with our planning director and got to a point and he left. And then I got the next planning director and I got the Bressettes to a point and the planning director left. So this is really incumbent upon us to try and get this straightened out. This has been going on for years and years and years. And again, I commend Councillor Hazelton for taking this on and helping the Bressette family. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think this, much like our prior item, is a way of trying to be, I'll call it fair and square with our residents in situations where, you know, they should not have to bear a burden of something that is not of their doing, if I can put it that way. And I think this is fair, and I'm also very pleased to understand that there has been a resolution that has been agreeable to both the residents and staff. So I think it's a positive story at this time. It took a while to get here, but it's now a positive story. So I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Whereas the township, through its Committee of Adjustment, have documented a decision on the Bressette matter for handling the land transfer from the Bressettes for Bass Bay Road. And whereas the Bressettes have agreed to sell the area of land for the road and the orphaned parcel of land to the south to Georgian Bay Township for $1. Now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to continue with the offer of the township, taking responsibility for arrangements and the costs of the survey and the registration of this area of land for the road and the orphaned parcel of land to the south on title. And the council directs staff to continue with the offered refund of $4,562.84, the cost of the peer review. And the council directs staff to waive the application cost of $3,000 for the needed zoning bylaw amendment as described in item 7 in the Committee of Adjustment decision of October 14th, 2022. Okay. Councillor Cooper.
I just wanted to say that it's interesting. I brought up the recommendations here, and what I'm reading is I think a very good and excellent outcome over the long term. We've had danced around this, as been pointed out by Councillor Bocek, for a long time, and to see this be resolved is very encouraging. And I wanted to thank both our staff and Councillor Hazelton for making this happen. It's a good outcome. I hope we have more of them like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I just want to ask staff if they feel that this is the final outcome and that we aren't unlikely to see anything further on this issue.
I feel like that's maybe a bit of a loaded question because there's still a zoning bylaw amendment application that needs to come forward.
So there is more still coming.
I can't speak to what will transpire in that process. I do know that, you know, even as recently as yesterday, I spoke with the Bressettes and they are satisfied with this outcome that's being proposed today. So I think it's a win-win for everybody at this point.
Okay. We still have a little bit further to go down this road, though.
Yes.
Not the Bass Bay Road, but this one.
Correct. Yeah, this part,
Thank you.
this part of it, yes.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
As mentioned by Councillor Bocek and others, it does go back a ways. But I'll also mention is that, it is the Bressettes that are pursuing a severance, like a lot of other people do in the township. Does it take them a lot longer? Certainly, but parts of those processes, such as zoning and surveys and all the rest of it, are what we apply to everybody, right? And that part has not changed, which the unique two parts of the application, I guess you could say, was the issue of Bass Bay Road, which has been actually owned by the township for decades, just not on paper title. All right. So when we talk about what obligations people have, we are making sure that we also know that on both sides there are things that kind of going on with here. And as mentioned by the clerk, yes, they have a zoning coming forward. We waive the fees, but they still are small things for signage and things like that that everybody else would have to put up within that. But a large chunk of that fee is, as you heard, is being recommended to be waived within that, and a small portion, but still remains with them in terms of the signage, things like that. And it will be in front of planning council, will be circulated to the neighbors. And you will make a decision on the recommendation provided by the planning department at that time with consideration from any, comments made by members of the public and the district.
All right, council, do I need to read the motion another time? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. I am moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved that the Planning Council adopt bylaw 2023-048 to confirm the proceedings of the May 9th, 2023 council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moved by Councillor Cooper, second by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the Planning Council does now adjourn at 9:28, 9:33. Just, I'm testing myself. Until June 6, 2023 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? That is carried.